Will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. There is a recurring sketch on Saturday Night Live portraying three friends being interviewed by NASA because they have survived an alien abduction. Seen it. The scientists ask questions. How did you get into the spaceship? What did the aliens look like? How did they speak to you? And the first two friends give similar responses. Oh, we were surrounded by a warm light and gently lifted up into the air. The aliens looked like love and peace and all of my best childhood memories. Their voices were musical, like the voice of God, etc., etc., etc. And then the scientists turned to the third friend, played by Kate McKinnon, a woman called Miss Rafferty. She's sitting there, smoking a cigarette, wearing a shirt that looks like the 70s, her pants up to here, and the scientists ask her if she has had a similar experience to her friends. Her iconic response every time is, well, things went a little differently for me. And in contrast to her friend's blissful esoteric experiences, she tells stories about creepy gray aliens, leading her into all sorts of outlandish PG-13 scenarios in which she always manages to lose track of her pants. Hilarity ensues, as it always does on SNL. I described this sketch for you because it's kind of how I see the book of Ecclesiastes. We've been working our way through the wisdom literature this Lent. Proverbs, Psalms, Song of Songs, extolling the goodness of God, the virtue of wisdom, the joys of a righteous life. And then we get to Ecclesiastes. Well, he says, things turned out a little differently for me. It's funny that Ecclesiastes is included in the wisdom literature because it's really kind of anti-wisdom literature. Ecclesiastes takes everything that we learn from conventional wisdom and turns it on its head. The author, he has no name, we'll call him the teacher, is an old man reflecting back on his long life. And he basically determines that everything is meaningless. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What do people gain from their toil under the sun? Life is hard. And what's the point? The teacher declares that he has tried out all of the things that are supposed to make life good and meaningful. He pursues wisdom and knowledge. He becomes good and righteous. But righteousness and wisdom are meaningless, he says, because life's not fair, and the wicked often win. Then he acquires great wealth and possessions, all the extravagance and pleasure you can imagine. But he determines that that too is empty and vain because none of it lasts. And finally, the teacher works hard to make a name for himself, to leave some legacy on God's good earth. But that he also finds pointless. Because, he says, you die, and then people forget you. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. If you're skeptical, don't worry. Throughout Judeo-Christian history, many people have asked, how did this make it into the Bible? Perhaps it helps to know that Ecclesiastes was written during a time of social upheaval. When the Jews came home from the Babylonian exile, they felt liberated, but they were still a conquered people. living under foreign empires. Over the next few centuries, one empire followed another: Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, all a little different and yet the same. There is nothing new under the sun. And with these political changes came economic changes, which made the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The cultural collisions of empire after empire led to religious changes too, as Jew met Greek, met Egyptian, met Arab. Traditional beliefs and worldviews shifted. Everything that had felt clear and settled became much more complex and confusing. Ecclesiastes is wisdom from and for a time of cultural deconstruction and existential angst, which is good news for us, because we too live in a time of cultural deconstruction and existential angst, don't we? I mean, have you noticed how terrified, depressed, and generally grouchy we all are these days? You know, strange as it may be, I believe there is some real value to having a book in the Bible that gives voice to our fear, our dread, our feelings of alienation. Professor Ellen Davis tells the story of one of her students who experiences frequent bouts of depression and describes reading Ecclesiastes as, quote, like slipping into a warm bath. A chaplain in Vietnam reports that it was often the only part of the Bible his soldiers were willing to hear. There is great power in our darkest moments, in hearing that the word of the Lord reflects back our experience to us, and knowing that we are not alone in these times of suffering and sorrow, that there is no dark place we can go that God has not already gone before us. Speaking of words, there is one word that the teacher in Ecclesiastes likes best of all. He uses it 38 times in this short book, 5 times in verse 2 alone. The Hebrew word is havel. Our Bible translates it vanity. Other translations read futility, absurdity, emptiness, meaninglessness. However you slice it, you get the point. But those are all metaphorical renderings of the word havel, because literally it means vapor, mist, a breath, something that disperses in the wind, is here 1 minute and gone the next. Which is to say, when the teacher cries at the beginning of the book, "Hovel of hovels, all is hovel," he might be declaring that life is vain and meaningless. But he also may be saying that life is short. It's fleeting. It's ephemeral. Life is like a mist that blows away in the wind. Blink too long, and it's over. It changes our reading, doesn't it? If the teacher is not declaring that life is absurd, but rather that it is unfathomably, even tragically, short. The very brevity, the fleetingness of life is what makes it precious. Reading havel, literally, vapor of vapors, changes this book of the Bible from a grumpy cynic saying life is meaningless to a nostalgic old man saying, life is short, carpe diem, or as the kids say these days, YOLO, you only live once. No amount of wisdom will prolong our lives indefinitely. The mystery of time, of God, of our life on earth is not something, the teacher says, that we can ever fully understand. The only thing we can do with life is live it, which is a good thing, because living is exactly what life is for. That's the conclusion the teacher comes to. Christine read it for us in chapter 9. Go eat your bread with enjoyment, and drink your wine with a merry heart. Dress well, live well, love well, work well. Whatever you do, do it with gusto. Because this is the life that God has given us. To those who would be wise, Ecclesiastes commends to us two things: joy and humor. Over and over this Lent, our scriptures have asked, what is wisdom? And they've all answered it differently. Proverbs said wisdom is relationship. Psalms said wisdom is being in the presence of God. Song of Songs said wisdom is intimacy with one another. And here Ecclesiastes tells us, wisdom is enjoying our lives and not taking it or ourselves so darn seriously. Vapor of vapors. All is vapor. Friends, believe it or not, this is the teacher's good news. He strips away all of our pretensions, our principles, our philosophies, takes us right down to the bare basics of who we are. We are dust. We are vapor. We are finite human beings, set in relationship with God and with one another. And it is so often these very pretensions, principles, and philosophies that keep us from enjoying life, is it not? That get in the way of our relationships with God and with one another. So let them blow away, the teacher says, like the vapors that they are.